This is the science and spirituality behind why you keep ending up in the same situations, making the same mistakes, and attracting the same types of people into your life. The evidence from both psychology and ancient wisdom points to a truth that might surprise you. Patterns don't repeat by accident, whether you believe in neural pathways or karmic cycles. Nearly half of everything you do today isn't a conscious choice, and that's according to research published in 2025. Your daily actions are habits shaped by neural circuits that formed years ago, maybe even in childhood. And your brain is wired to replay the same scripts over and over. What makes this both troubling and hopeful is that those same mechanisms trapping you in repetitive cycles can also set you free. The science of why your brain loves patterns. When you find yourself dating the same type of person for the 5th time or self-sabotaging another opportunity, something specific is happening inside your skull. Psychology calls this repetition compulsion, and it's not a character flaw, but how your brain is designed to work. Neural pathways form through repetition in your brain, and every time you perform an action, think a thought, or respond emotionally to a situation, neurons fire together. When neurons representing a stimulus and a response fire simultaneously, they form what neuroscientists call memory traces, and if you do this enough times, you've carved a highway through your brain that becomes the default route. A small midbrain area called the striatum handles this process, playing a key role in movement and learning. Your brain uses the cortico-striatal associative loop when you're learning something new, which is goal-directed behavior requiring conscious thought and effort. Once that behavior becomes automatic, your brain switches to the cortico-striatal sensoromotor loop, and this is where habits live, running on autopilot without your conscious involvement. Research published in 2012 found that it takes an average of 66 days for a behavior to reach automaticity, that plateau where it becomes truly automatic. Not the 21 days you've probably heard people claim, but 66 days on average. Simple actions like drinking a glass of water become automatic faster than complex routines like doing 50 sit-ups. But the timeline isn't even the most significant part. What matters is that nearly 50% of your daily actions are habits shaped by routine, not conscious decision-making, which means you're essentially on autopilot for half your waking life, running programs that were installed years ago. The childhood programming that runs your adult life, the patterns controlling your relationships, your career decisions, and even how you handle conflict, were largely written before you turned 7 years old. This isn't mystical thinking, but backed by 30 years of data from the University of Minnesota. Researchers analyzed 705 individuals and their families over 3 decades, from infancy to age 30, and the data came from the study of early child care and youth development, which followed over 1,000 people across the United States. What they found provides what researchers called the most rigorous longitudinal evidence to date about how childhood shapes adult life, published in November of 2025. Individuals with higher quality relationships with their mothers were significantly more likely to develop secure relationships with romantic partners, family members, and close friends in adulthood. The quality of childhood friendships also forecasted the security of romantic relationships 30 years later, and positive, soothing, and supportive experiences with primary caregivers play a role that lasts for the rest of your life in shaping how you attach to people. Your brain learned what normal feels like during those early years, and now it scans for people and situations that match that template, even when that template causes pain. This is why you might unconsciously seek out partners who can't commit if your parent was unreliable, and it's why you might gravitate toward friends who criticize you if you felt criticized as a child. Psychologists call this your attachment style, and it's incredibly predictive of your behavior. But here's the thing. Your brain is looking for familiarity, not happiness. And familiarity feels safe even when it's objectively harmful. When trauma creates the loop, trauma takes pattern repetition to another level entirely. And when something overwhelming happens, especially in childhood, it doesn't just create a memory but dysregulates your entire nervous system. Chronic states of either hyperarousal or hypoarousal can lock you in place after trauma occurs. Hyperarousal looks like anxiety, reactivity, and constant scanning for threats, while hypoarousal shows up as numbness, dissociation, and emotional disconnection. And both states create their own repetitive patterns that keep you stuck. If childhood trauma taught you that people can't be trusted, you might develop a shaky sense of self-worth that manifests in predictable ways as an adult. You might feel a need to control everything because surprises feel dangerous, push people away because closeness feels risky, or unconsciously zero in on people who will validate your belief that you're not worthy of consistent love. Here's the unconscious goal behind all of this. Your brain is trying to master the original trauma by putting you in similar situations, hoping this time you'll finally resolve what happened back then. Without awareness, this rarely works, and you just end up reinforcing the same neural pathways, making the pattern stronger each time you repeat it. These patterns started as survival mechanisms, adaptive when you were young and powerless, but they become maladaptive when you carry them into adulthood, where you have agency and choice. Your 5-year-old self needed those coping strategies, but your 35-year-old self doesn't. And the problem is your brain hasn't updated the software. The dopamine connection. Dopamine explains what makes patterns so hard to break, even when you consciously want to change, and it's more complex than you might think. A study published in Nature in November 2024 revealed something about how dopamine builds behavioral patterns. Dopamine-dependent synaptic plasticity creates what researchers call latent attractors in the brain, and you can think of these like gravitational wells in your behavioral landscape where dynamics converge locally toward these attractors, pulling your behavior in specific directions. Dopamine does something even more interesting by widening the basins of these attractors through modulated synaptic excitability, making goals accessible globally from distant positions. In simpler terms, dopamine doesn't just reward you for reaching a goal, but reshapes your entire behavioral terrain to make certain goals easier to reach repeatedly. Dopamine neuron activity spikes in the motor regions of your brain each time you initiate a learned task, reinforcing the entire sequence. Columbia University researchers developed a closed-loop system with wireless sensors to track movements in mice and link specific actions to real-time dopamine release, and when they blocked dopamine-releasing neurons, the subjects performed poorly, confirming dopamine's central role in habit formation. Breaking patterns is so hard because you're not just fighting against willpower or wanting to change, but against a neurochemical system that has restructured your brain to make certain behaviors the path of least resistance. The spiritual side, karma and cosmic patterns. While neuroscience explains the mechanism of repetitive patterns, spiritual traditions have been describing the same phenomenon for thousands of years, just using different language. In spiritual contexts, these recurring patterns are called karmic cycles, defined as a repetitive pattern of events, experiences, emotions, and realizations in our lives that are divinely designed to teach us spiritual lessons, heal past wounds, and help us advance in our spiritual journey. Some traditions call this the dark night of the soul. According to spiritual teachings, you keep attracting the same type of partners or facing the same financial issues because the universe is trying to teach you something, and the cycle is created through the choices you make during your lives. Note the plural. Many spiritual traditions believe we live multiple lifetimes, and lessons we haven't learned tend to show up again, just in different forms. From the Ekankar tradition, most karma is made from this lifetime, though periodically there's a long-standing condition from another lifetime. And they give an example. A leopard in Palestine shortly before the Christian era would face repeated reactions of horror and disgust, leaving a deep scar that could persist for centuries across multiple incarnations. Whether you take this literally or metaphorically, the pattern is the same. Unresolved experiences create recurring situations until you learn what you need to learn. Teal Swan, a spiritual teacher, puts it this way in 2021. In order for a pattern in your life to not repeat, you have to make a different choice, and the universe, as you, will put you into a repeat scenario in order to see if you will make a different choice and do something different this time. Carl Jung's synchronicity. When patterns reveal cosmic order. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who founded analytical psychology, tried to bridge the gap between science and spirituality with his concept of synchronicity, which he defined as an acausal connecting principle, whereby internal, psychological events are linked to external world events by meaningful coincidences rather than causal chains. Jung wasn't just talking about lucky coincidences, but arguing that the universe has a pattern-making tendency that emerged as a fundamental property of reality, even before light, matter, gravity, and the other laws of physics came into being. He called it the master pattern of life. In a letter from 1975, Jung wrote about synchronicity's role in the origins and development of life. In this chaos of chance, synchronistic phenomena were probably at work, operating both with and against the known laws of nature to produce, in archetypal moments, syntheses which appear to us miraculous. Jung attempted to account for synchronistic events through his concept of the archetype, patterns of instinctual behavior responsible for organizing unconscious psychic processes, and archetypes constitute the structure of the collective unconscious, which represents a psyche identical in all individuals and contains images of all creation. What does this mean for your repetitive patterns? Jung would say you're not just replaying your personal trauma or neural circuits, but tapping into archetypal patterns that exist in the collective unconscious of humanity. And your individual story connects to universal stories that have repeated across cultures and centuries. The law of attraction. You don't attract what you want. Wayne Dyer, the motivational speaker and author, summarized the spiritual perspective on patterns with one sentence. The law of attraction is this: you don't attract what you want, you attract what you are. This is where spiritual teachings intersect with psychology in an interesting way, because chronic habits of thought create chronic vibrations. A habit of thought is a thought you tend to think regularly, a persistent go-to thought. And these create vibrational patterns that either serve you or don't serve you. If you have a habit of appreciation, you create a vibrational pattern at the top of the emotional scale, which according to this framework, fuels manifestation of what you want. If you have a chronic habit of unworthiness, you continue to offer the vibration of unworthiness, and you continue to attract relationships and partners that match that vibration. Whether you call this vibration, energy, or simply your unconscious beliefs affecting your behavior and perception, the pattern is consistent, and you recreate externally what you believe internally. The cyclical nature of what you keep manifesting comes from vibrational matching between your inner state and outer circumstances. The comfort zone paradox plays a role here too, which is the tendency to stick with what's familiar, even if it's bad for you. The fear of change keeps you trapped in karmic cycles according to spiritual traditions, or in maladaptive behavioral loops according to psychology, and it's different words describing the same phenomenon. Where science and spirit agree, despite completely different frameworks and vocabularies, science and spirituality describe the same core truths about repetitive patterns, and the agreement is striking when you look closely. Both agree that most of what drives your behavior is unconscious, with psychology pointing to subconscious insecurities, old coping mechanisms, and emotional disconnection. Spiritual traditions point to soul-level memory, karmic imprints, and connections to the collective unconscious, but both say the same thing. You're not consciously choosing to repeat these patterns, and something beneath your awareness is running the show. Both agree that patterns serve a function, with scientists asking what function does this behavior serve and where can I intervene, while spiritual teachers say patterns are divinely designed to teach us spiritual lessons, heal past wounds, and help us advance. One is mechanistic, the other is purposeful, but both recognize that repetition isn't random. Both agree that awareness is the key to breaking free, with psychology emphasizing cognitive behavioral interventions and mindfulness practices, while spirituality emphasizes awakening and consciousness expansion. The first step in both is seeing the pattern clearly, and both agree on something hopeful. Change is possible through neuroplasticity, which neuroscience shows can change your brain based on new experiences. Spiritual traditions teach that you can break karmic cycles and evolve, and neither view says you're stuck forever with the patterns you have now. How to actually break the cycle? The science. Oxford University just announced a £5 million project in November 2025 to study repetitive negative thoughts, also known as rumination, and they're using non-invasive brain stimulation, MRI scans, computational modeling, and even biofeedback from eye pupils. The fact that this much funding is going into understanding repetitive thought patterns tells you how significant and how challenging this problem is. Some strategies that work based on existing research are already known, and one of the most effective is deliberately introducing novelty into your daily routines. This disrupts maladaptive patterns by engaging the brain's novelty circuits in the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, and these regions mediate dopamine release, which heightens motivation and fosters curiosity and adaptability. Novel experiences like altering your commuting route or adopting new hobbies create cognitive interruptions that counteract the automatic reinforcement of undesirable habits, based on research by Krebs and colleagues in 2009 and Bunzek and Dussel in 2006. Another evidence-based approach is friction-based interventions, which means increasing friction for maladaptive behaviors while reducing it for desired ones. Make unhealthy snacks less accessible. Use app blockers for social media, and automate bright lights with your morning alarm. And research by Duckworth and colleagues in 2016 showed that amplifying friction maximizes impact. Value-based interventions work too, where writing a commitment letter or reflecting on how a behavior aligns or conflicts with your core values leverages your psychological drive for internal consistency. This creates discomfort that motivates change, based on Festinger's cognitive dissonance theory from 1957. And self-monitoring practices like tracking health-related behaviors amplify effects by increasing awareness and providing real-time feedback. Research found that missing the occasional opportunity to perform a behavior didn't seriously impair the habit formation process, and automaticity gains resumed after one missed performance. If you slip up, you haven't ruined everything, and the pattern can still be changed. How to actually break the cycle. The spiritual path. The spiritual approach to breaking patterns starts with awareness and recognition too, but it frames the work differently, and you need to spot the signs of karmic cycles by being aware of your thoughts, emotions, and actions. By recognizing these signs, you can start to change, leading to positive changes and improved soul evolution. Subconscious reprogramming is a major focus in spiritual approaches, where the subconscious can hold on to negative thoughts or attitudes that keep you in karmic cycles. By spotting these beliefs and changing them, you can start to clear your karma and move on, which is essentially the spiritual version of cognitive restructuring in psychology. Understanding the comfort zone paradox and embracing what spiritual teachers call divine timing can help you break free and follow your true spiritual path. Instead of fighting against the pattern, you learn to see it as a teacher, and the universe putting you into a repeat scenario becomes an opportunity rather than a punishment. Some traditions use past life regression, energy clearing, or working with spiritual guides to address patterns they believe stem from previous incarnations. Whether these practices work through actual karmic clearing or through the psychological power of ritual and metaphor, many people report breaking long-standing patterns through these methods. The integration, using both approaches. The growing acknowledgement that scientific knowledge can complement spiritual wisdom for understanding patterns is the most interesting development happening right now. You don't have to choose between neuroscience and karma, because they're describing different levels of the same phenomenon. Your neural pathways are real, your childhood attachment patterns are real, and your dopamine system's influence is real. And all of this is measurable and verifiable. The meaning you make from these patterns, the sense of purpose or lesson you extract, that's where the spiritual dimension comes in, and meaning is incredibly powerful for motivation and change. Recognition that brains can change at any age through neuroplasticity offers hope for breaking long-standing patterns, and you're not doomed to repeat the same mistakes forever. Whether you frame this as rewiring your brain or clearing your karma, the endpoint is the same. You can become different than you are now. The movement in psychology toward understanding that different pattern types require different intervention strategies parallels the spiritual teaching that each soul has unique lessons to learn. There's no one-size-fits-all solution, and skills must be targeted to the specific cycle element, which means the right intervention depends on the pattern structure. Why nearly half of New Year's resolutions fail? Nearly half of New Year's resolutions fail, and this statistic makes sense when you understand everything we've covered. People try to change behaviors without addressing the underlying neural pathways, childhood patterns, or if you're spiritually inclined, karmic lessons. You can't just willpower your way out of a pattern that took 66 days to form and has been reinforced for years or decades. And Psychology Today put it this way in 2025. Whether you are trying to quit smoking or eat more vegetables, changing your habits takes more than willpower, because habits are shaped by how your brain learns and makes decisions. The people who successfully break patterns are the ones who understand what they're up against. And they know they're not fighting a character flaw, but fighting neurochemistry, childhood conditioning, and decades of reinforcement. If they frame it spiritually, they're facing karmic debt and soul-level lessons that demand conscious work. Some psychologists now use parts work to explain why change is so hard, where this framework says different parts of your psyche were created for survival, comfort, protection, or maximizing potential. These parts can conflict, with one part wanting to change while another part is terrified of change because the current pattern, however painful, feels safe. A new framework, routines as launch pads. A 2025 perspective is starting to reframe how we think about patterns and habits, and instead of seeing them as rigid constraints that trap you, what if routines and habits are actually launch pads, stable foundations from which you can explore change and innovation? This is a subtle but significant shift in thinking. Your patterns aren't the enemy, but the ground beneath your feet, and the neural pathways you've built, the attachment styles you developed, even the karmic cycles you're working through, they're all part of your foundation. You can't build a new structure without acknowledging the foundation that's already there. The equation of life, as one behavioral framework states, is this: your belief system plus your repeated actions plus time equals who you will become. This works whether you're stuck in a negative pattern or building a positive one. And the mechanism is the same while the direction is what differs. Long-lasting neuroplasticity from habit learning creates stable changes in gene expression through epigenetic mechanisms, which means your patterns aren't just psychological or spiritual, but literally changing your genetic expression. You're not the same person at a cellular level after years of running a particular pattern, but this also means you won't be the same person after years of running a new pattern. The controversy in attachment research. Not all scientists agree on everything about patterns, and it's worth acknowledging this before we wrap up. While the large University of Minnesota study with over 1,000 participants found strong correlations between childhood and adult attachment, a smaller study from 2021 found the correlation between child attachment and adult relationships was insignificant, with a p-value of 0.42. The mean for anxious attachment was 14.83, with a standard deviation of 17.96, and the mean for avoidant attachment was 35.91. with a standard deviation of 41.26. These numbers suggest wide variation in outcomes. This doesn't mean childhood doesn't matter, but that the science is still developing, still debating, still refining its understanding. The larger, longer study seems more robust, but the existence of conflicting findings reminds us that human psychology is complex, and not everyone follows the same pattern, even when they have similar childhood experiences. This is encouraging in a way, because it means you're not deterministically locked into your childhood programming. There's variation, there's individual difference, and there's room for agency and choice, even within the constraints of your neural wiring and early experiences. The current state of pattern research. Research into patterns is more active than ever as of December 2025. Oxford University's £5 million study on repetitive negative thoughts is actively recruiting and conducting research using brain stimulation and MRI, and habit formation research continues to update our understanding, with recent publications refining the 66-day timeline and showing it's more variable than originally thought. The November 2024 Nature publication on dopamine and behavioral attractors represents the current understanding of how motivation and patterns interact at the neurochemical level. Columbia University's work using wireless sensor technology to track real-time dopamine release is pushing the boundaries of what we can measure and understand about moment-to-moment behavior. There's also a trend toward personalized interventions. And just as medicine is moving toward personalized treatment based on genetic profiles, behavioral science is recognizing that different pattern types require different approaches. What works for someone with anxious attachment might not work for someone with avoidant attachment. And what works for breaking a simple habit might not work for trauma-based repetition compulsion. What this all means for you, whether you interpret your repeating patterns through the lens of neuroscience, psychology, spirituality, or all three, the truth remains: these patterns are real, they're powerful, and they're not random. Your brain is wired to repeat what's familiar. Your childhood taught you templates for relationships and self-worth. And your dopamine system reinforces behaviors that worked in the past, even if they don't work now. If you believe in spiritual frameworks, Your soul is cycling through lessons it needs to learn for evolution. Here's the other truth. Patterns can change through neuroplasticity in your brain, shifts towards security in your attachment style, and redirection of your dopamine system. Spiritually, you can break karmic cycles and evolve. The key is awareness, and you have to see the pattern clearly before you can change it. You have to understand what function it's serving, what wound it's trying to protect, and what lesson it's trying to teach. And then you have to make a different choice, not just once, but repeatedly for 66 days or longer, until the new pattern becomes automatic. This is why the same patterns keep returning. Not because you're broken or cursed or doomed, but because that's how learning works at every level, from neurons to souls. Repetition is how the universe teaches, and the question isn't whether patterns will repeat, but what you'll do differently this time, when they do.